everyone, I am Chuyao. Welcome to iTalk. In today's episode, we're going to share Chinese perspectives on the reason behind the U.S. failure in Afghanistan. With the U.S. troops being completely withdrawn from Afghanistan and the Taliban regaining full control of the country, a new era has begun in Afghanistan. Since then, the U.S. failure in the region has been brought under the spotlight. Among the heated discussions, a number of Chinese scholars have given their insights on the reasons behind the U.S. failure in Afghanistan. The first article we'll be sharing today is from reporter Ding Gang, Afghanistan War. The U.S. trapped itself in the clash of civilizations. Ding Gang is a senior editor with People's Daily. The second article is from JIN Feng, The Fundamental Reasons Why the US-EU Coalition Failed in Afghanistan. Jin is a research fellow at Shanghai International Studies University. The third article is from Dr. SHEN Yamei, Why did the Taliban succeed in recapturing the power in Afghanistan? The US puts the blame on others and is in need of introspection. Dr. Shen is the director and associate research fellow at Department for American Studies, China Institute of International Studies. Reporter Ding interprets the U.S. failure in Afghanistan from the perspective of the clash of civilization. Reporter Ding believes that it is the conflict between different civilizations and religious beliefs that ignites the confrontation in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan war is in fact a war between Islamic and Christian fundamentalism. The war essentially had reflected the hierarchical conceptualization of civilizations in the West. Western countries see themselves as representatives of higher civilizations, and it is their responsibilities to transform the so-called inferior civilizations or backward nations. Thus, Western countries have been willing to take tough measures for the fulfillment of their goals, their promises to God, including the initiation of war and the seizure of territory through force. Reporter Ding further analyzes that the U.S. strategy of democratic transformation in the Greater Middle East to a large extent has led to their failures in Afghanistan. The U.S. intended to completely eradicate terrorism by forcefully implementing Western democracy in the region and bringing fundamental changes to the Islamic states. The U.S. strategy reveals its own extreme misunderstanding towards Muslim culture and shows its disrespect against the Islamic world. It is the arrogance and ignorance of the U.S. that has largely provoked hate sentiments among the Muslims and Islamic groups, and further brought the cohesion and unity into extremists, which ultimately had led to its failure in Afghanistan. To quote from reporter Ding, the U.S. schemes to westernize Afghanistan by bringing Western values and democracy to the country were up in the clouds, very much unrealistic. Considering the incompatibility between the democracy of the West and the domestic situation in Afghanistan, Western values could never be converted into concepts that would be widely accepted by Afghans, let alone to be fully adopted in Afghanistan. From the second the fully armed Americans stepped onto the land of Afghanistan and visualized themselves as the savior of the country, their fates had already been sealed. Jin Feng, the research fellow at Shanghai International Studies University, also gave an in-depth analysis on the U.S. failure in Afghanistan from the perspective of civilization. Jin suggests that the defeat of the United States and its allies can mainly be attributed to three reasons. First, Western hegemony's arrogance in interpreting civilization and in promoting Western political system has eventually trapped itself into the self-made value interventionism. Western countries monopolize the definition of civilizations and label the Western democracy and human rights as the universal value. Second, Western countries heed the interventionism behind the facade of human rights protection, initiated the Afghanistan war for the pursuit of their own geopolitical interest, and attempted to intervene in Afghanistan affair for the fulfillment of its hegemonic expansion purposes. Third, the arrogance of the US and its European allies has resulted in the serious misjudgment of the situation during the withdrawal process, as they were not prepared for the Taliban's quick seizure of power in Afghanistan. It ultimately had led to their once-in-a-century political and military fiasco. Dr. SHEN Yamei shares the similar viewpoint with the previous two scholars. Dr. Shen emphasizes that the Biden administration should not evade the underlying reasons behind its defeats in Afghanistan, and should not simply put the blame on either the Afghan government or its predecessor, the Trump administration. The U.S. should learn its lessons from its failure in Afghanistan. First, the U.S. should abandon its hegemonic strategy and should neither blindly rely on forceful military intervention when conducting the war on terrorism, nor insistently expand the size of war. Second, the U.S. should take the survival and development needs of other countries into consideration, try to understand and respect political and cultural differences of other countries and societies. Third, the White House should seriously consider how much the U.S. is currently suffering from trust deficit in diplomacy. After summarizing the U.S. failure in Afghanistan, it seems that we can now come to a brief conclusion. The international community should respect and uphold the principles of self-determination and non-interference. One should never forcefully impose its political and cultural values on the others, and should never utilize universal values like democracy and human rights as tools for the fulfillment of one's self-interest. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed our video, please like, comment, and share it. For more information on iGCU, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. See you very soon.